I spoke to a woman quite recently who went from 28 years in banking to open her own fiber arts business. I've spoken to women who have left the corporate world, and she made art out of cremains, animal. I mean, and it sounds
What?
weird, but she's doing very, very well out of it.
Uh,
So it's understanding that your value and who you are doesn't diminish with age, and that you've got so much to offer, and the journey isn't over. In fact, this stage of the journey is even more exciting because you know what you don't want,
yes.
because you've experienced what
Right.
you don't, you've experienced, but now you can think about, I know I don't want that. I'm quite clear on that. What I
Right.
do want is this, so mm-mm, get over it.
You know,
Get over it.
hey everyone, welcome to Unapologetically 50 Plus. My name is Angela. So today we are going to be talking about how can Black women pivot their career after 50. My guest is Miss Janice Sutherland, the founder of This Woman Can. But before we get started, I have one huge favor to ask. If you find any value or enjoy the content, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You are helping me build this community, so I truly appreciate your support. Also, I will be giving a masterclass on Saturday, May 24th, called Rediscovering Purpose and Passion. I will be talking about how purpose evolves with life stages and how to align your life accordingly, and how to reconnect with and prioritize passions that have been sidelined. So please sign up. The link is in the description below. All right, you guys, let's get this conversation started. So thank you, Janice, for coming on and gracing me with your presence and agreeing to agreeing to do this podcast with me. I appreciate it. So tell the audience a little bit about what you do and why you decided to do what you're doing.
Okay, my name is Janice Sutherland, and as you can tell by the accent, I am English born, but I actually live in the islands, live in the Caribbean, and have done for the past 14 years, very happily. Thank you very much. I sometimes call myself a corporate escapologist because I spent my whole life in the corporate world, being very successful in the UK, coming out to Antigua, building my career, becoming the first female CEO to head up the telecoms industry in two countries here.
Oh,
And then suddenly realized in my early 50s that, whoa, this is not what I planned to do when I moved, how many thousands of miles away from my home, from my birth country, and work at a much higher rate than I ever worked before. Very successful, enjoyed what I was doing, but was finding myself burnt out and very much unfulfilled. So, and being the main breadwinner here, it was a very much an internal conversation myself, what we're going to do, the panic, how we're going to afford it, what we're going to do, what am I going to do? It's a small island. I'm never going to get a job doing this. Do I want a job doing this? There was all those things going through my head. And I remember speaking, so the first conversation I need to have is my husband, because I was miserable as anything. And
mm.
he was my punch bag. He was, when I was miserable coming in from work, he was the one I was taking out. And I said, look, I'm not happy. I'm just not happy doing what I'm doing. And he just literally just turned around to me and he goes, well, you've been doing it. You've been doing it 7 years. I think you've given it a good crack. If you want to do something else, do something else. And it was like, whoa, he's not bothered. So, he can see, and I wasn't quite clear what I wanted to do. I had a little bit of plan, but we were going through a restructure at work. And I remember saying to my boss, I'll give you 6 months because wherever you're doing what you're doing, it's not for me. I'll take you through this restructure because I've worked these people, hired these people, they're more than numbers. But where you're going with this as a business is not where I want to go. So I took a sabbatical. I think let me take a step back. Once I decided that yes, I'm going to do this. everything started, all the excuses I built for myself internally
Uh,
started just falling on the wayside. Finances, I was made redundant. So it means I got a package when I didn't think I'd get a package. The little things just happened.
yeah.
And then I took a coaching program while I was, and my company paid for the coaching program. So I just used that skill set and flipped it round to what I was doing. So to present day, because that was a long, very long answer, to present day, I developed This Woman Can, which is a personal development organization. I basically have, I think, morphed over the years because I started doing leadership and stuff like that. But now I really work with Black women over 50. I'm pretty adamant about that. I'm a career strategist, life, help them. We were talking off air, and this stage of life past 50 it's magical. I don't think people realize I'm 60. I just turned 60,
Okay.
and I'm like, whoa, I am loving this. This is, so liberating. And I want more women to realize that life doesn't end. We had the story of growing up, our generation, like, when you get to this age, you need to be sitting in the corner, you need to sickle, as we would say, sickle yourself, make yourself smile, that kind of stuff. And it's no, no,
It's
no, no,
not.
no,
No.
no. We're living longer. So yes, we have less years ahead of us, but we have far longer than we anticipated, which is why retirement ages are changing,
Right.
because governments have realized that,
Yeah.
so we're living longer, which means let me enjoy. If I've been working 30, 40 years, let me enjoy the next 20 at least.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what does that look like?
What
So
does
that very
that?
long answer. My apologies.
No, that was beautiful. No, don't apologize at all. I love it because I'll be 60. Well, I have a couple more years. I'll be 59 this year, but you're absolutely right that 50, 60, it doesn't look the same. You don't feel the same.
No.
And you don't want to make yourself smaller. And we do have, I say, the best years ahead of us because we
Yes,
have the
absolutely.
wisdom, we have, the experience behind us,
Yeah,
and we for the most part, care a little bit less about what people think. We want to live our lives
yeah,
to the fullest at this point in
yeah,
our life.
yeah.
Now, I was going to ask you, do you so your program, This Woman Can, do you guys
Yes.
also help women who are trying to, build their own business, or what exactly?
So this Woman Can is kind of like the brand and the business, and then I'll have individual coaching packages in between that.
Okay.
So in coming up in, depending when this airs, but this later this year in June, I'll have 50 Forward Fearless Future. And that is specifically aimed at Black women over 50 who need a little help with their mindset, who
Oh,
need to understand that, what we're talking about, the best years are ahead of them, and how can you plan for that?
okay.
And then I will have individual programs of individual coaching. I try not to be too packaged because what I found is that sometimes I work with women and they're like, this is what I want to do. But when you actually get into the mindset work and actually dig a bit deeper, you realize it's actually not what I thought I wanted or I needed. Some people have come to me saying, I want to leave my organization completely. And when we finished working together, it's like, well, actually, I actually enjoy the environment, but what I need to do, and I probably could get what I need out of the environment, but I need to make certain tweaks. I need to have
Oh,
different conversations. So really, I try a little bit more. I can be a little bit more tailored, which is I think is the beauty because I have a lot more flexibility, so I can work with women as to what they want to do. That
yeah.
being said, I have helped women transition from going from leaving corporate into establishing their own business, and not about the actual setup, but more about the mindset you need to have, and what is it
Okay.
you need to be clear on. What is it you want out of this next phase of your career?
Oh, okay. Okay. I like that. I like that. Um, so what was a personal aha moment that pushed you to start This Woman Can?
Um, I think the aha moment, especially like I said, I've been around a few years, but where I've niched now to working with Black women
Hmm.
was that I was getting approached by a lot of. I mean, I was fighting. I never really thought about this is the niche or this is what I'm going to work in. But what I found was naturally a lot of women were coming to me at this age because they're saying, "Well, we followed you on LinkedIn or we've seen your social media. We
Hmm.
know you've done this, and how did you do this? And how could I do that?" And I'm suddenly realizing. Oh, actually, in as I tell, actually, I could actually share. To me, it was just it was just business as usual. This is life, me lifing. But actually, I realized that some women, it's not so much bravery, but
Yeah.
having the confidence to take that step. So I wanted to create that platform where women could actually do that, who could have that open conversation. And we know that there's a plethora of coaches out there. But there, in my experience, are not many who are Black and over 50 and female who have had a lived experience,
Right.
who are not going to discount when you said something happened to you in your career. We're not going to go, really?
Right.
Because even if it hasn't happened to us, we know the possibility because of the culture, because of the road we've walked, that it's a distinct possibility. So I'm not going to discount what you've experienced.
Right.
I'm going to help you work through it.
Okay. Okay. What's been the most unexpected lessons in your transition from CEO to coach?
Um, Knowing how much I love it. I think that, and I think as much as I've always strived to be authentically me, even in my corporate world, but there were still situations where, we're doing the code switch. It was
Yeah.
natural. That's what we had. That's what we did. And even when I was going to making my transition to my niche, I was still trying to disguise or soften the fact that I was being quite adamant that I only want to work with a certain group of people. And I
Hmm.
was trying to disguise that. And I was saying like women of color, this, that, and that. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no, no, I'm like, let me say it loud and proud. This is who I want to work with.
Yeah.
And my authenticity is very important to me. So I've always tried to express that in the podcasts, the conversations I have. I suppose it's been one of my superpowers is that, as one client said to me, you get me. You get it.
Yeah.
And we could have that conversation where, yes, I would talk to you like I'm your friend. And I'm a little bit of a woman whisperer. I get women on side, get very comfortable with talking. And maybe you'll tell me things that, you felt were a bit of a secret and you didn't feel comfortable sharing, but you share it. And we're saying, okay, it's great, but let's work through that. So for me, it's about the authenticity and being who I am, 100%. That I am the brand. I am,
Right.
I
Yeah.
believe this woman can.
Yeah. And that's I kind of went through the same thing of with my podcast because I pivoted from a podcast with me and my husband. He's a musician, so his time is limited. So I pivoted to doing Unapologetically 50 plus.
Yeah.
And I also went through, well, is it going to be for women of color,
Yeah.
or is it
Yeah.
going to be for Black women? And then,
Yeah.
you hear people saying, well, but if you I've heard a number of people say, well, if you just say Black women over 50, then your niche is getting much smaller. And I'm thinking, I understand that, but that's where my heart's at.
Yes. Yeah.
Being 58, that's where my heart's at.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to appeal to everybody. Now, for
Yeah.
you, do you just work with women 50 and over, or do you work with women in their 40s and 30s, or?
I do work with women mostly in their 40s. I've worked with women in their 40s who are navigating that corporate because I have the C-suite experience.
Okay.
There are some women there are some clients that are like, well, I want to know how to take that next step or how to navigate it or what do I need to do. So I do that as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
But like you say, I've started, and I was doing it without saying it, moving to the 50s. I was doing it without saying it,
Right, right.
for a couple of years, all through the pandemic.
Mm,
I was doing that, and I just said, let's just bite the bullet and just do it. But
yeah.
as a demographic, the over 50s is one of the biggest growing demographics.
Oh, okay.
So, and so I also work with organizations to look at how they start supporting their midlife
Mhm.
workforce,
Okay.
because we're here to stay. We're not going anywhere.
No, we're not. And I'm assuming because everything is online, you work with women worldwide. It's not just
Yes.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it's global, which is a beauty.
Right. Right.
Yes, I love to travel, but I'm and if I do travel, I'm in a country where I know I've met a previous client or a podcast guest, I would always hook up and try and meet in real life.
Yeah.
But majority of my work is done online,
Yeah.
and that way I can be a bit more flexible as well with fitting in with women who don't want to do it in their work time or want to do it in the evenings or on weekends. So it gives me a level of flexibility that is more accommodating.
Okay. So how did the lessons that you've learned, how did it challenge or expand your leadership style?
My leadership style, you mean personally my business or when I was in leadership itself, when I was
I'd
actually
say your business, more so your business.
one of the things that mantras I have is that I don't want to work that hard. Literally, that is literally my mantra. When I came out the corporate world, I don't want to work that hard.
Okay.
And I really had to, because I was so corporate. I would beat when I first started out, I would beat myself up. I'd have these measures, KPIs, key performance indicators,
Yes.
where I've been measuring myself as if I was in the corporate world and getting highly disappointed when I wasn't achieving those goals.
Right.
To only take a step back and realize, well, actually, Janice, you had a whole team there. You had a whole business that was supporting you. And
Right.
if that's what you wanted out of what you were doing, then you shouldn't have left.
Right.
So I really had to reassess, talking about my values, what was important to me, and know that just because I'm just writing about it this week, actually, for my newsletter, about taking intentional pause. If I want to pause, that doesn't mean it's a weakness or it means I've got to keep going 100 miles an hour. It means I'm respecting myself, my body, who I am, to say, actually, I need time to regroup now.
Yeah.
I need to take a step. I need to, and I'm pretty sure I've got the luxury of doing that, running my own business. I totally take that on board. But I think I've been a better from a leadership perspective. I am my employee.
Okay. Yeah.
I am my employee. So how would I like to be treated? How would I like my boss to treat me?
Right.
And I'm that boss.
Right. And it goes back to the mindset because
Yes.
changing, I'm sure, and I was in the pharmaceutical industry and I understand the KPIs and all that. And it
Yeah.
used to just
Yeah.
drive me absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
But you're right that mindset, that getting out of that corporate mindset when you're running your own business and you're
Yeah.
not going to you might not meet those goals that you've set for yourself because you're right, you don't have a whole team, it's just you,
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
got to give yourself that grace, most
Yes.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you say to someone who's afraid it's too late to pivot or start over? Because I know for me,
Oh.
we I it was a struggle for me to really understand, and I still go through it, that it's not too late, Angela. I know we always say age is just a number, and yes, it is, but no, it's not. So, what do you say to someone like me?
Well, first of all, I'm probably the wrong person to ask that because I do keep pivoting. I've moved countries, changed jobs, changed careers, and and I know for me, change, as they say, is a constant, and reinvention is part of that. It's just a change, but I want women to understand that whether you're 40, 50, or 60, whatever age you are. It's not the same as when your mama was that age because that's probably your reference. The people
Yeah.
who you grew up with who were
Mhm.
that age. So you're looking at them thinking, oh, they're getting old or they're doing that. We're a whole different generation. It's so different. So I want every woman to unlearn that myth that success has an expiration date. There are so many women out there who are doing new things. I find that through the podcast. Women who've changed careers. I spoke to a woman quite recently who went from 28 years in banking to open her own fiber arts business. I've spoken to women who have left the corporate world, and she made art out of cremains, animal. I mean, and it sounds
Wow.
weird, but she's doing very, very well out of it. So it's understanding that your value and who you are doesn't diminish with age, and that you've got so much to offer, and the journey isn't over. In fact, this stage of the journey is even more exciting because you know what you don't want.
Yes.
Because you've experienced what
Right.
you don't. You've experienced, but now you can think about, I know I don't want that. I'm quite clear on that. What I
Right.
do want is this. So get over it.
You know,
Get over it.
have you had to coach someone through something like that? And what?
Yeah, I mean, because they come on thinking they're too old. They can't do it. Our mind is a very powerful
Oh my
tool, and it's
gosh.
fabulous at telling us all the reasons why we can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm failure, judgment, and
Fear.
we've
Yeah.
yeah, and we've been there. We've stayed in jobs that made us miserable as sin.
Right.
We have stayed. Why? Why?
Right.
Because we think, for me, it was, I mean, at one point it was like, people like, you give up a big job. I'm like, well, yeah, the job was the job. It may have been a
Right.
big job, but it wasn't making me happy.
Or
You know,
the famous words we hear out here, you don't give up that good government job.
exactly. Well, the good government job is making me miserable, and it's,
And sick.
and I can't, and I can't enjoy it. And, it looks good on paper, but I've outgrown it.
Right.
I've outgrown it. So, it's really about reframing and understanding that there are more things ahead, because I don't understand why we're like this when we get older, because when we were younger, we were fearless. We were in our 30s. No one could tell me not to wear those short shorts, and do those dancing. No one could tell
Right.
me not to do that. So why? Societal,
Right.
said this is what you should be. And I'm like, but we see this a lot more women disproving that now, and you can be one of them.
Definitely. I'm working on, I know for me, I would have never in a million years, a couple of years ago, would have believed I would be doing a podcast because I don't like to be in front of the camera. I am an introvert, whereas funny, my husband's very much an extrovert.
Yeah,
But and I still have to start doing lives because I do pre-records and
yeah,
then folks are, well, you need to do lives. I'm like, okay, that's the next step. But I've had to really do a lot of my own mindset work. And that was like for, a year straight, I would sleep with some meditation on or some affirmations or just different things to retrain that subconscious level because
yeah,
it was deep. The fear was deep. So when
yeah,
I look at where I've come and what I'm moving forward towards and even moving to another country,
yeah,
it can be done. It does take time and it does take being consistent about
yeah,
changing that mindset.
yeah,
So
yeah,
mindset to
yeah.
me, people can say what they want, but it's everything.
It is everything. And, first of all, if you do your lives, I'm in,
Okay.
because I've done lives. So, and
Okay.
it's not painful, but, and just understanding that it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
It
Right.
doesn't have, you can spend a lot of time waiting for the right moment,
Right.
for the right time, the right sign, the right signal. But, it's the right time. If you're thinking it, the right time is now.
Is now. You're right.
The right time is now. And I got over the perfection thing. Don't get me wrong, I understand about the video, the camera. But half for me, and part of me was that, for me, the camera bit, the video was, I have to look a certain way on camera. I can't just, I love podcasting audio because I can just whip out what I'm doing and sit down. There's my idea. I can write it down and I can talk. That
Right.
no one's going to see me. I can just wax lyrical. But with the video, I feel like I have to look a certain way. So I put a little bit of powder on, put a bit of lipstick,
Little,
make sure my hair is done. So
right.
I don't feel I can be as spontaneous,
Right. Yeah.
but if it has to be done, I will do it.
Yeah.
It's just more about the preparation that has to go into it. And, and as much as anybody will say, well, you don't have, you said about not being perfect, Janice. I'm not trying to be perfect. I just want to look a bit
Right.
like,
Exactly.
look like I know what I'm talking about, not some wild woman who's been in the garden, which normally where I am, and coming all sweaty with a bandana on. Right?
And my husband and I started with a just an audio podcast, and it was
Yeah.
great. And you're right, you feel so much more, free. You don't feel as
Yes. Yeah.
constricted than we
Yeah.
started for whatever reason started doing videos. But I love the just the audio podcasts. So yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. So
My husband made me do video. They need to
oh.
see your face, Janice. They need to see your face. That was, yeah. So,
So, how can someone identify their core values if they spent years suppressing them?
great question. Great question. I think it's understanding what makes you happy, what lights you up. And I know it seems a bit cliched, about what brings you joy,
Yeah.
but you know, but also understand what makes you feel resentful.
Mm.
There's two things. I have a little exercise I do with people about, what make. Oh, in fact, it was another coach who introduced it to me about writing down what makes me sick and tired. I'm sick and tired. So writing down what you're sick and tired of, and it all starts. I'm sick and
Oh,
tired. I'm sick and tired of because and when I'd rather be doing this, and it was like, wow, such a powerful thing. It's just understanding, what is making you resentful. Because sometimes we just know we're unhappy, but we
yeah.
haven't really sat down to think about what it is that's making us unhappy. And then flipping on the other side, okay, well, if that's what's making you a little sick and tired or resentful, what is it you actually want? And you'd be surprised at how many women struggle to work out
What
what
they,
it is they actually want,
yeah.
what makes them happy. So you want to start reflecting on the times when you felt, most alive, most engaged. What made you feel really good about yourself? It could be when you went back going those short shorts. Who knows? I still wear a lot of shorts now, my 60-year-old legs. I got good legs,
Nice.
so I'm going to flaunt them. So I have no compunction about that. But also consider what makes you, what you're naturally drawn to. What makes you do this every day if you could. If money was no object, if you didn't have all the excuse you're telling yourself that what you do every day in, day out. And those will start leading you. Some of those things will start leading you to what your values are, what's important to you. For me it was freedom.
Mm,
A freedom was a big thing. Freedom was a big thing for me.
yeah.
So, and yeah, freedom, authenticity. So yeah, it's how do I make that run through what I do?
I think society has made it so difficult for us to know what our joy really is. And trying to really, and as you were saying that, I was sitting here in my own head, okay, what does really bring, and that's an exercise I'm going to try because you
Yeah,
really don't know truly, or I should say, I really don't know what truly brings me joy. I think I know,
yeah,
and maybe that is it, but you're right. What really, because I always say, I just want at this stage of my life, I just want peace. But
yeah.
go a little deeper, what does
Yeah.
that look like?
Yes, yeah. And what
So
does it feel
what
like?
does it feel like?
Because because it's all the senses. What does it look like, feel like, sound like?
Right.
It's understanding, or it's understanding. See, I'm getting all, I'm getting all here. It's understanding all of that. Yeah.
Sorry, I put myself on mute.
That's it.
No, you're absolutely right. It's figuring that out, and that's really a great exercise because it then kind of breaks down that confusion, that wall, and then you can hopefully move forward from there.
And I think one of the things we have to understand is that we evolve. You know, the values we had in our 30s, 40s
Right.
are not the values we're going to have in our 50s, 60s. That they're allowed to evolve. We've lived life, we've raised our family. Some, most of us raised our family. We've had the job, we've had the career.
Yeah.
We're allowed. Give yourself permission to want more things for you because we spend so much time being something for everyone else.
Right. Right. I know for me, it's been helpful going through therapy, and I recommend therapy, whether it's with coach therapy, a therapist,
Yeah.
whatever, but to get that therapy and preferably get it with a woman, a black woman. You know,
Mm, mm,
if you can find a therapist as a black woman, I was very happy when I was able to find a therapist, black woman around my age, because I
right.
really can open up and she
Yes.
can understand that, hey,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I get you.
I get it. What mindset traps hold back women during this midlife shift?
Well, it's the same things we kind of mentioned before, things like fear of failure,
Mhm.
being judged about, will people think I'm crazy, if leaving this job or doing something new. The fact that they think the skills are outdated or they're too old. I
Mm.
get a lot of women tell me they financially can't afford to change. And whilst I found that finance, yes, it does play, but it's the easy go-to you know and if you keep on working and making finance a thing that's keeping you where you are while you're miserable, what happens? Because at some point, I know for me, my body gave me a whole big slap and told me, girl, you better understand,
Yeah.
you need more than this. So you get burnout and all those things that you're signs that something needs to change. Something, so don't have them have them as excuse. So we start reframing those thoughts and focusing on the strengths, celebrating what it is, they bring to the table, their accomplishments, and getting to view change as an opportunity for growth. Because this is evolution.
Yeah.
This is evolution. We're just emerging at this catalyst, and chrysalis. That's what I'm looking for. Into something new.
Do you find women at our age have a lot of or have some imposter syndrome going on?
Do you know? I did a piece about this a long time ago, whether it's imposter syndrome or belonging, because I think it depends where
Mm.
you are in your career. I don't think it's imposter syndrome at this stage because I think if you've got to be successful and you've got if you got to this age and you're still alive and you're holding it together, you've been successful, So I don't think it's imposter syndrome. I think it's lack of clarity as to what's next. I think it's also the fact of not understanding that or not realizing that you can make yourself the priority. You can put yourself first
Mhm.
because we're so used to being something for everybody else.
Mhm.
The thought of, well, actually saying no to you or to somebody else or a family member, you've always put them first and making yourself priority can be a little bit scary. And I think it's understanding that we matter and being able to embrace that because I don't think as I said, most of us have spent so much time raising the family, being the partner, successful partner, having that successful career, being something to everybody else, and never actually said, "Who do I want to be for me?"
Okay. I was thinking more along the lines when I say imposter syndrome, like if you're doing a career change or even coming out of a corporate career, going into your own business and feeling like, okay, I've never built a business. I'm an entrepreneur. I've never built a business. Do I really know what I'm doing? That's what I guess I meant. Because I know that's what I have been feeling like. Is this imposter syndrome, even though I'm talking about something I know,
Yeah,
being in 50, 50 plus?
it's not imposter syndrome; it's more
Okay.
the fear. It's a fear of what are the things we talked about before. It could be fear of failure because the fact is, you may not have run your own business, but you've worked in corporates, you know how business works.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, you
Yeah.
have a skill set. You have a skill set that even if you don't recognize it, it's there. It's because and the skill set quite often is because we take it for granted because it's something we do naturally.
Right.
But if you ask three people, what am I really name three things I'm really good at? You think I'm really good at. You'd be surprised at what they come up with because you're thinking, really? Really? That's your thing, because you're taking it for granted.
Yeah.
So it's understanding where your strengths lies,
Right.
because we have been so adept at just navigating the day to day and being very good at it that we don't recognize it that it's a strength.
Okay. Okay. I will look at it differently then. So what did life abroad in Antigua teach you about reinvention and aging with intention?
Oh,
You've been there a
I
long time, so.
yeah, I've been here. I've been here quite a while, and I absolutely love it. It taught me about the importance of simplicity.
Mm,
We don't have major malls here. We don't have the big behemoths that have hundreds of stores. We
right.
don't have that. Some community and literally slowing down a little bit.
Nice.
Slowing down was a hard one for me, you know, and because I was so used to running at the speed, especially, in the first world environment, everything's available. I came back to a world where I was started to had checkbooks. I thought I've not had a checkbook for over 10 years. And then, it don't get we've evolved since then,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
there are
yeah.
little things. And then I always tell people, if you don't come here with the intention of expecting to have the same level of life or expectations that you had in the first world, because you're not going to get it. Because if that's what you wanted, you should have stayed where you were.
Hmm.
So it's for me, it's about simplicity, it's about slowing down, it's understanding that reinvention is really part of life. Because even now I'm thinking about, as much as I said I don't want to work that hard, at my business, I'm also thinking about how can I turn my passion. I've been learning how to garden over the past 3 or 4 years, and I've set myself the goal of growing 80% of what we eat.
Oh,
I'm expanding my garden. And now I'm thinking, okay, how can I turn this into a business? So now I can spend, like more hours doing the garden and less doing the coaching. And how does that look? So for me, that's another transition. That's another reinvention. And it's okay. It's okay if what you thought you were doing changes. As I say, it's okay to swerve. It's not A to B, or that the linear. It's okay to swerve, a little bit times. And it's okay to go back and revisit it,
yeah.
So it's having that flexibility for me, is knowing that, yeah, I can do what I want.
And I think a lot of us, especially you call the first world countries, that we have been taught, when you get something, you stick with it to the end. And we're not really taught to pivot. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm
yeah,
grateful that my mother has always, I mean, she's no longer with me, but she was the one who would always talk about make sure you're always reinventing yourself. So I did hear that, but
yeah,
her
yeah,
actions were different. She
yeah,
stayed at the same job, for however long. And I think that gets so much into our heads that it's hard to pivot because we don't have the example, and we
yeah,
weren't told or taught that it's okay to pivot. It's okay to leave that job, or it's okay to do something different. So
yeah,
that's a tough transition for a lot of us.
but I think, but for, I mean, I think for me, I think I didn't realize I was pivoting throughout my career, because I think my focus has always been is someone paying me my worth? What's my value? And am I being paid for my worth? And even now, being an entrepreneur is probably the longest job I've had in, as a business, because even throughout my career, I spent an average of 4 years at an organization. And I was always clear, like, what do I want? And can this organization give it to me? And I'd have that conversation with bosses and I'd say, well, this is what I'm looking for. Is that credible? Is that something that can happen? And if they were to say to me no, I was very comfortable in thinking, in knowing, and not knowing, not thinking, knowing that if they didn't want me, somebody else would. And that has always been my attitude. So I always kind of pivoted throughout my career. I
Wow.
was confident in who I was and what I brought to the table. And I think, again, at this age, it's being clear on that, knowing your worth and what you bring to the table and the skill set and the strengths you possess and the wisdom and experience we've talked about at this stage of life, because it's even more valuable now.
Yeah. Yeah. How has your environment where you're at now supported your growth?
Um, I think the fact about the slowing down, I think I didn't realize I was such a, I mean, I'd always been a runner for years.
Mhm.
So I was always outside running, but what I didn't realize was how much of an outdoors person I was. So I love getting my hands dirty. I don't worry about having, before it was all about the look, the heels. I think I could wear a heel again if you paid me right now, you know, but but it has allowed me just to, for want of a better word, not be so polished, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
just relaxed and been very, very comfortable with who I am. And even if I run to the supermarket sometimes, there's a much stronger chance. When I was in the UK, I'd never think of running out to the supermarket dressed anyhow, because who's going to see me? Who I might run into? And I've
Mm.
never run into anybody. But it's quite possible here because it's much smaller.
Mhm.
But I still don't mind running out now, thinking I just put a pair of shorts and a t-shirt on and run to the supermarket. And if someone sees me, I'm going to say hi. I don't mind, because if you know who I am, what you're seeing isn't who I am per se.
Okay. So, what's a transformation story that still gives you goosebumps, gives you chills?
I love this question. I know you talked to me about if I worked with women who are younger than 50, and this was one. She was in I think she was late 30s, coming up to 40,
Mhm.
and we had our first call. I always have an exploratory call to understand not just if, I can work with you, but, do you want to work with me? It's a two-way process,
Right.
coaching, so we have to gel. I have to feel I can help you and vice versa. And after the first conversation, I remember saying to her, I can see your greatness. She just gave me chills. I'm like, oh my gosh, she just doesn't see the power
Yeah.
she possesses. She just didn't see it. And she was in an organization, she was doing very, very well. She was being recognized for what she was doing. She was moving up the ladder. Companies were headhunting her, and she was like, oh, the company's coming to me. And I'm like, I said, you don't know, you don't understand the power you have. So if people are coming to you and your organization is literally throwing you promotions. They're giving you what they think you want. How clear are you on what you want?
Mm.
So we changed. I said, this is a negotiation process still. They know they can see how great you are. They can see what you can't see, which is why they're trying to keep you in the organization by offering you all these promotions. But is it what you want? So
Mm.
if you can articulate and have that conversation, say, okay, this is what I want out of the organization going forward. Is it possible? Is it possible? And bet your bottom pound to a penny, they will bend over for you. And they did.
Wow.
So it was understanding, and for her, the key was helping her gain clarity on what her long-term goals were. She liked the organization, but she wasn't very clear on what she wanted out of that role longer term.
Mhm.
So we looked to how we can align those, and also create the boundaries, because one of the things she was having, again, you're very successful, you're a victim of your own success, everybody wants a piece of you. So she was struggling with creating boundaries
Oh,
and saying no and feeling comfortable saying no without realizing. Sometimes we think if you say no, it's going to, scupper all my chances and people are going to think
right.
I'm this way and I'm awkward. But it's about how you position those no's and what you do. And giving people the power where they think they didn't have the power. So, and to protect your boundaries. So, yeah, so that she really, yeah, that even thinking about it now, and we're still in touch. She will drop me a WhatsApp and tell me, look, this is happening, and I never knew I could do this. I never thought I could. And it's just great to see that because it's just seeing that power that they possess, and women realizing that they can do it. And I have a saying, a phrase I use is that, we're always talking about women being empowered. And by definition, the word empowered means to give something, give them the power. And I always say you don't need to be empowered when you already have the power. We already have it within us. You just need to know how to unleash it. And
Mm,
I always work on that premise. It's
mm.
already there.
Wow. I like.
So I have a love-hate relationship with the word empowerment. I really do.
I'll remember that. I won't say that, but I thank you for yeah, thank you for educating me on that. That makes a lot of sense. That was a great story. I really like that one. So, what does a fearless future look like for you right now?
Oh, continuing to live life on my terms.
Mm,
And it sounds a bit trite, but I'm really happy with the life I've created. So that's continuing to have the balance of impacting more women, helping them guide so they can get to the same situation where I am, where they feel more aligned with their values. It means embracing new challenges, so always challenging myself. I'm not too old to learn something new. What new challenge? Keep traveling, exploring new places, and not to stop learning and growing, because I can always learn something new. I'm always looking for that something different. Writing. I never knew I was a creative. I didn't think I was a creative because I was so used to writing reports and stuff like that till I actually turned my hand, and then I'm writing books, and I enjoy writing my blogs and stuff like that, and sharing
yeah.
just have my feelings, and just this is how I feel today.
And so, what are some of your habits that help you stay connected to your vision?
My habits is my walk. I no longer run because back issues,
Right.
but I'm a very competitive person. Very competitive person. So, I ran marathons in the past and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I walk every other morning, so 4 to 5 miles. That's also my contemplation time. I listen
Oh,
to
wow.
podcasts. I've got little walk buddies or gardening buddies on the way that, you build. It's amazing what goes on around you and who you meet on a regular, that realizing you're meeting on a regular.
Right.
So I do that. I spend time in the garden. I read a lot, travel, spend time with my husband, my partner. We like to talk and just enjoy each other's company. I
Mm,
mean, you have to, you're married. You have to keep working at,
yeah.
keeping it fresh. We're 20 years in now, so it's about this is my forever. This is my forever husband, whether he likes it or not.
As I tell my husband, you just stuck with me. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, so but that's not to say that that's not to say that I don't like my own space. So I also have what I call husband holidays. So he knows that I once a year I probably travel, jump on a plane somewhere.
Yeah.
Usually was the US because it was accessible, though I'm having to look at that. But I go for a few days and just have me time.
Right.
And he didn't feel it doesn't diminish what we have. It's just
Right.
that I
No.
want to keep exploring who I am, and just have some time to me. So either he travels and I have my husband holiday at home, or I travel, so
And that's important. That's especially when you've been married for such a long time. My husband and I have been married, I always forget, 28 or 29 years. So,
yes,
but it's important for, each one of us to have our own time, our own space, because, you don't always want to be up underneath. You're still individuals. You are still
yours
individual
exactly.
people. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's beautiful. So how do you stay bold and visible? How do you
you can see I'm a bit talkative, a little chat. I can be a little chatty. So I'm not afraid to speak my mind. So I'm not going to be silenced. Things like, I used to dye my hair, and it got to the point where, you know, if people can't understand that all of this, all this wisdom and experience, and where it comes a little grey hair, that's their problem, not mine.
Yeah.
So who am I doing it for?
Right.
I'm this is who I am, and if
Mhm.
you can't see that, that's your problem, not mine. So it's really about just maintaining me, being authentically me,
Yeah.
and just continue sharing my story, celebrating my age and experience. I'm not ashamed to say I'm 60 and fabulous.
That's right.
I
That's
celebrated my
right.
60 years of fabulousness the whole of 2024. Told my husband, I gave him 2 year advance notice that 2024 was my 60 years of fabulous. From the January 1st to December 31st, it was my birthday,
I heard
and
that.
that,
I love it.
and that was, I gave you the warning. I'm going to do this. I'm going to travel. I want to do this. I want to try that, and yeah, so
Yeah.
just keep on, just living, just keep on living.
I tell my husband for my 60th, well, he'll be in Portugal by then. I said for my 60th, it's going to be a big, because for my 50th, I didn't do a big deal.
Yeah.
But for my 60th, it's going to be all out
Yeah. I
in
mean, my 50,
Portugal. So,
yeah, I think my husband knows how adventurous I am, because for my 50th, he took me zip lining,
oh, okay.
and so things like that. So I always like to try, just like I said, challenge myself and try something new, as long as my joints can still move, because sometimes my body says, Janice, take it easy. It can take pity on me a little bit. Just take your time. You're not where you used to be. So it just reminds me, and I respect that.
Yeah. So, what's one myth about success, leadership, or aging you wish every woman would unlearn?
I know we said that age is just a number thing, and it literally is. But I think it's understanding that your value doesn't diminish with age.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, and you've still got so much to offer. And the fact is that we think we're starting over. You hear about this thing about reinventing, and reinventing itself sounds like you're starting over, starting from new, you're starting from scratch. Well, actually, you're starting from experience, because there's so much more now.
Hmm.
Not repeat, hopefully, not repeat the mistakes you made in the past, and to use that experience to shape what you want going forward, because you have that wisdom. And don't be afraid to ask.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't know it, there's women like us. Like I said, I do like to tell my clients, and to be quite polite about it, that you're not that special in the most nicest possible way, because we go through this me, myself, and I mentality, where we think I'm the only one, no one understands, no one could possibly understand, it's me, myself, and I going through this, when invariably, no matter where you are, what I found, especially speaking to all the women I spoke to during my own podcast, is that we've all experienced the same thing, variations on a theme, but we've had the experience the same thing. So share that knowledge. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just ask someone. Listen to podcasts like ours, and if you get one little bit of nugget out of it, then it's something you didn't know before. But you don't have to go through the pain on your own.
And that's what I love about having different women on here, because there's a lot of things I don't know, but each woman that has come on here has enlightened me, and I've learned from each one of you. Just like
Yeah,
now, the word reinventing, that I didn't think about looking at it that way, that it's when you say reinventing, it sounds like you're saying starting over, but you're not,
yeah, yeah,
because we have that experience. So we're not
yes,
starting over.
yeah.
So that's another word I will keep in mind when when I look at these words now. So you are going to be also I have one more question, but you're going to be at the
Yes.
Job Liberation Summit.
Yes, I am. The Job Liberation Summit, the virtual Job Liberation Summit for Black women.
Yes.
Yes. And I will be hosting a masterclass called Pivot to Power. And
Mm,
it's been specifically, if I remember rightly, Dr. Kamani Norrington Sands, who's been a podcast guest.
yeah.
Um, one of the things she said, the output she had from the previous year was that women over 50 were asking for specific advice that related to them. So, and I already volunteered, said, look, I'd be interested in working with you guys when you do the next summit. And she approached me and asked, would I do a masterclass? So I'm doing that,
Okay.
Pivot to Power. So just talking about, look, it's not going to change your life overnight. It's it's an hour masterclass, but it will give you some insights into what you can start doing. And if you choose to work with me further after that, the options are there. Or if you choose to work with somebody else. But yes, I'll be hosting a masterclass for that event.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, my final question, what does it mean? And I know you're 60, but what does it mean to be unapologetically 50 plus to you?
Well, that's such a fabulous question. And off the top of my head, I always have, you can't see the back of my wall because I've got the what's the name, but I've got the background.
Uh,
But I always say, don't tell me I can't do something because the version of you, because your version of me expired the moment you created it. So
I
that's on
like
the
that.
back
Say
of
that
my
one more
that's
time. I like that.
so don't tell me I can't do something because your version of me expired the moment you created it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like,
So yes. So on the back of my wall, and I have that, and you don't need to be empowered when you already have the power. I told you that.
you're
And
right.
then the other one is never apologize for being the ambitious, strong, confident woman that you are.
Mm,
So yes, that's on
I
the
like
back of my
that.
wall behind me to remind me every when I come into my office. Just a gentle tap.
I like that. That was beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Janice, for coming
Thank you.
on and giving us your words of wisdom. This is amazing. How can folks get in contact with you if they want to work with you? I think
Yeah.
everybody needs to work with you. Every woman 50 plus, you need to work with this lady. It's amazing. She's
And so even if you can visit my website, www.janicesutherland.com, kept it very simple. And, there's lots of free resources, even if you don't feel, sometimes we tell ourselves, we're not ready yet. And I hear that because sometimes it's taken 18 months to 2 years for women to come and work with when we start talking. And I respect that because you have to be in the space where
yeah,
you are ready to make that change.
yes,
And I understand people have different timelines. That's fine.
yes.
There are lots of free resources on there. There's quizzes, there's download PDFs, ebooks. You can listen to the podcast. You can follow me on all the socials. I am Janice Sutherland. Instagram, Threads. LinkedIn is often my happy place. I share a lot on
Yeah,
LinkedIn,
you do.
so yeah, so all those places, that's where you can get hold of. That's the easiest place to get hold of me. And even if you just go to the website, you'll find all the links there.
Okay. And I'll have that information in the description below. So thank you
Fabulous.
again, Janice. I'm going to hold you to that live. So
Yes, of course.
I'm
Just
going to hold you to that
whenever.
live.
Not a problem at all.
And I wish you the best on the Job Liberation Summit. I know it's going to be amazing. So everyone, thank you again for joining us. Please check out Miss Janice Sutherland. Check out her website. Check out her podcast. She has amazing information, especially for those of us 50 and over. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification, and I will see you again next week. Thank you guys. Bye.